After journeying through 3 circles, we were finally at the end. The 4th circle, the entrance to Abyssos. Even though Abyssos is now out, and everyone has cleared it, I've taken a while to get these done, but I've really enjoyed taking a closer look at this tier, and I'm so appreciative of everyone's comments and feedback. I won't wax sentimental too long, but I just want to thank everyone for that support. I know this is like a Kingdom Hearts-centric channel, so anything that strays in that, YouTube kind of buries, but I really appreciate the people that have checked it out and dropped comments. Okay, as always, this will not be a raid guide. I just like to shine light on the animations and battle mechanics that sometimes are too subtle or small to notice during the heat of battle. Coming back to a 4th turn when everyone has forgotten all the mechanics is kind of hard, not gonna lie. But anyways, today's breakdown is on Hesperos. Hesperos is the keyword over Asphodelos. He actually shares in the 3rd circle cutscene that he has become one with his creations. They even characterize him as a Hesperos, a demigod. It's actually really interesting now how they set up this idea of demigods, and then we see a bunch in the next tier. One of the easiest references to pick up is the Dracula references that abound in this fight, from the blood-related attacks to his 2nd form being a literal vampire. It's kind of hard to miss that one. Anyways, let's take a closer look at Hesperos' battle. I will break this up into 2 parts, covering the first phase of both normal and savage, before talking about the savage exclusive phase at the ends. A flowing tattered cape and a rapier as weapons of choice against you in the first phase. He can freely change the area during this fight using magic, just like he did to change the arena for the 3rd circle raid. This is called setting the stage and can cover 1, 3, or all 4 quadrants of the arena. Curtains drape over the outside of the arena during this change. A blue light can be seen baiting the walls, as well as Hesperos' rapier as the curtains pull back, revealing an elemental panel covering the floor. There are 4 elements: lightning, water, fire, and poison. These elemental panels are triggered by Hesperos casting Pinax. This shows 4 orbs circling up above him as the panel comes to life. The hole in the middle of the panel will spew forth its element as it gets ready to go off. The lightning and water panels also trigger a soaring vortex in the center during normal mode. Each panel has a special animation when its attack goes off. Lightning has a dome of electricity and orbs appear on its panel as a giant bolt of lightning strikes the center, while smaller bolts arc out across the arena. Poison has liquid fill up the panel while drops of poison fall into each player. The fire quadrant has lava filling its panel as a flaming meteor hurtles down towards the party. Water has a whirlpool circling around the panel while a deluge of water knocks everyone back. A really interesting thing is the name of the attacks for these panels. Each has the element name, of course, but that describes what kind of mechain it is. Mechain, which I'm probably saying wrong, is a crane used in a Greek theater. This was usually used to lower an actor playing a god down to the stage from above. With Hesperos calling himself a Hesperos, it's pretty interesting that they chose this name. You realize throughout both of these phases that the attacks are nods to Greek theater, especially in phase 2. Some of the attack names are just gruesome, like Decollation, which is the raid wide for this phase. Decollation literally means the act of beheading someone. This is a pretty simple animation with purple energy being drawn to Hesperos as an orb forms around him. This is then all pushed out in a giant raid wide attack. Hellskewer is an attack scene in the normal version that has Hesperos slicing upwards, sending forward a spinning blade effect, as well as smaller slashing effects that all move forward. Speaking of his blade, now is a good time to show off the auto attack. Nothing too crazy, just a quick swiping strike. Elegant Evisceration is the tank buster in this raid, and continues with the intense naming convention. Hesperos spins as he strikes at the target, and darkness rolls around the player. In Savage, this is a 2-hit attack with the same animation both times. Bloodrake is the next attack, where Hesperos gathers Aether from all the players and stores it in his rapier. This causes his rapier to glow with a red aura. There's a ball of glass embedded in the rapier that appears to fill with your Aether after this attack goes off. In the Savage version, red tethers will latch onto players during Bloodrake. Hesperos can do a number of attacks that all have the name Balone in it, which is the name of Hesperos' weapon. For my research, all I could find was a connection to a needlefish, but I guess maybe that's just like the name of a, I don't know, rapier? I mean, it is an eel kind of looking thing. Anyways, the stored Aether that he steals from you is used for these Balone attacks. Hesperos does the same animation for these series Balone attacks, sinking his sword into the ground, funneling the Aether into the next attack. You can actually see that his sword stops glowing after he uses your Aether. Anyways, there are 5 attacks. Balone Coils and Balone Bursts are both seen in Normal and Savage, and there are also some Savage-only attacks like Director's Balone, Vengeful Balone, and Elemental Balone. And now Balone sounds weird saying it out loud. The Coils attack summons towers that must be soaked with a player roll that is not in the middle of the tower. The Falling Orbs have lightning arcing around them during their descent and explode in a wide AoE as they resolve. The Burst attack creates green orbs that tether to players after a second. When a player runs into them, they explode in a small burst of energy, unless you're in Savage, and then there's a huge blast of energy. Director's Balloon is a Savage-only mechanic. This attaches the roll call debuff to players, and you can also see this cool effect spin around you when you get it. The description indicates that the Aether given to you is cursed and shows red Aether circling around the player. A small explosion appears around characters when it resolves. If you give your roll call to another player, you will receive the miscast roll, leaving you with a cleansed effect. This balloon happens in tandem with another mechanic, Inversive Chlamys. Chlamys is a short cloak worn in ancient Greece. There's a setup to this attack that happens with the first blood rake of the fight. This is Etheric Chlamys, which has Hesperos storing the Aether that he just stole from you in his cape. You can see this symbol appear in front of Hesperos and a red orb, most likely your Aether, moving to the center, and the rapier symbols on the outside shooting outwards as the Aether locks into place. Inverse Chlamys sends poisoned Aether orbs flying towards tethered players, creating a giant explosion on impact. Vengeful Balloon will give everyone different acting, tank, DPS, or healer debuffs, meaning you have to grab the orb roll of the debuff that you have to dispel the debuff. Elemental Balloon reduces magic resistance to all the elements except for the panel that Hesperos did not tether to in the blood rake before this mechanic. This is connected to the Perioctoi attack, which sets off all the panels at once. The same animation plays as the Panic attack since he is triggering the panels just all at once. The Greek name Perioctoi means revolving and was a device used to change theater scenes rapidly, so I can kind of see the loose connection with Hesperos triggering these elemental stages all at once. The last mechanic seen in Normal is the Shift mechanic. This mechanic in Normal shows exactly where Hesperos will shift to with a symbol of either his balloon or Chlamys. The cast bar also gives you the direction he will shift to, and his balloon or Chlamys will glow with Aether depending on what he is using. The sword attack uses the same kind of effect that the Hellskewer attack does, though this shift attack covers a much larger area. The Chlamys attack is a strong knockback that will blow you across the arena. Savage has 4 points that drop on all the cardinal directions with no symbol above it, so you have to look at both the cast bar and Hesperos to determine what will be coming at you from where. So that is all that I have for part 1. Let's look at part 2. In Savage, if you can get Hesperos down to below 50%, he will shift into his second phase. It seems that Hesperos imbues his rapier with his own Aether and suspends it in the air. He then covers his weapon with his mantle. After a second, the mantle expands, revealing the sword to be gone and dark thorns flying out from every direction. These stick into the air surrounding the arena before melting and spreading to cover the spot it struck. These thorns look very similar to his rapier, and could be what he changed it into. Thorns continuously shoot out before the entire arena is covered by these dark thorns. The mantle covers Hesperos before he transforms, revealing a 4-winged vampire beast. Giant dark thorns stab into the outside of the arena. The outside arena looks incredible. It's like this floating area outside of Asphodelos. The chains that were covering Pandaemonium are here, as are the giant cages and snake statues seen outside of Asphodelos. Far in the background, an island can be seen sporting towers, which have a similar structure to the ones of Asphodelos. This fight is heavily inspired by Greek tragedies, with most of the attack names being the different acts of the play, with everyone having to play a specific part in this dangerous dance. I'll get the auto attack and raid wide out of the way first. The auto attack is just a simple claw swipe. Searing Stream is the normal raid wide that has red and black energy pushing out and creating a bubble around Hesperos. Okay, let's look at Act 1. Hesperos talks of a tragedy unfolding here, our first nod to the Greek tragedy structure. The name of this tragedy is Acanthai, which literally means a thorn. All the mechanics in the second phase are shown during the cast for the act, before Hesperos throws out thorns to those spots. It's like a practice line read before the act begins. Hesperos begins casting Wreath of Thorns, which cause tethers to go to each thorn, showing off which mechanics will go first. Act 1 is made up of AoE explosions and towers that all need to be soaked. The explosions here are giant pools of flames. These fan out across the floor. Towers call down lightning bolts and are called Prometheus' lightning. All these attack names actually have the name Prometheus in the beginning of them. Farsight and Nearsight are tank bust mechanics that target the 2 closest or farthest players away. The 2 people being targeted begin having these purple beams shooting up from the ground below them. Then black orbs start shooting upwards and black smoke explodes around them. Act 2 setup begins with towers and AoEs appearing on the edges of the arena before thorns take their place. Demigod Double is another tank buster where Hesperos gathers energy into an orb and shoots it towards the player. This explodes on impact. Act 2 starts to resolve after this tank buster, though Hesperos adds some other mechanics during his Wreath of Thorns cast. He sticks thorns into random players with a crystal above their head, indicating what their thorn will trigger. The green crystal is an arrow attack that will instantly kill both tethered players if it breaks. There's a tornado animation that appears when you break it or after it resolves. The orange crystal will create an orb of fire on the player who broke the tethers. This is the shared stack. The purple crystal is a small raid wide that goes out with a kind of dark air burst. During the beginning of Act 2, there's also Dark Design, which drops these red and black puddles under players. Act 3 has towers, but no AoEs this time. The unique attacks alongside these towers are Cthorno's Kick and the Water Knockback. Hesperos will charge up and dive towards the farthest person away from him to deal a massive kick that cracks the ground. The 3 closest players will then be hit by these exploding earth shakers. Water splashes out right after this attack, pushing you into the spikes if you aren't careful. Hesperos will then do the exact same thing, where he'll do a kick, you guys will bait earth shakers, and then you'll have to soak towers. After this act resolves, Hesperos casts Heartstake, a little nod to the way to kill a vampire. Well, maybe not a little nod. Hesperos gathers energy and aims at the player with the highest emanate, putting a bleed effect on them. Act 4 onward starts tethering you to thorns for some of the mechanics. We've seen the purple crystals in Act 2, which does a raid wide. The blue crystals have a water bubble burst when the tether breaks. I just want to take a second to kind of showcase all the different crystal effects, because I really like the elements swirling around them. I think it's a really nice touch, and something that you don't really notice when you're playing, because you just see blue, purple, red, orange, death. Anyways, Finale spawns towers and then tethers you to additional thorns with green crystals making you move to a certain side. During this, Fleeting Impulse goes off, which has Hesperos shooting orbs at each character. When the orb hits you, thorns spin upwards around you. I really like the animation for this, since most of the animations in this part are just explosions of varying red hues. So I really like that there's this unique animation for it. You stay in a circle to soak the towers, depending on when you got hit, again forcing you to be in very specific spots. Curtain Call is the final mechanic, tethering everyone with purple crystals for raid wides. Curtain Calls acknowledge the actors who performed in the play, having them step forward one at a time to receive applause, so I thought the mechanic was actually really clever. The last attack happens during Curtain Call, which is Hell Sting. These are conal attacks with the dark red effect spreading outwards from Hesperos. He does a nice double swiping animation to set off the initial attack and follow-up hit. Hesperos has one last raid wide that he'll do called Ultimate Impulse. This has a red orb appearing in the air, pushing out energy as dark thorns shoot up out of the ground. This is an incredible looking attack. And I think that is all I have for the final circle of Asphodelos. I love the second part of this fight, and how good it feels to resolve the mechanics. The first part, while there were some really interesting visuals to the mechanics, is not really my favorite. Pinax memes, oof, not fun. The tight DPS check paired with so many variations to Pinax just really leaves a bad taste in my mouth. All in all though, I think the setting and fights were a great ending to Asphodelos, and I love the idea of Phase 2 where you have to be in these specific spots and it's like you're going to your markers for a play. It's so cool. Anyways, if you enjoyed this, be sure to subscribe and check out my other breakdowns on Final Fantasy XIV or Kingdom Hearts. See you in the next video.